Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Zach here, secretsoflongevity.com. There was a very interesting article in one of Canada's national newspapers, the Globe and Mail, and you can actually find a link below to the article if you want to read it online if you don't happen to get the Globe and Mail or have access to a copy of it. And it's a very widely read newspaper. I believe it's the biggest newspaper in Canada. And on the front page of one of the other sections besides the front page of the whole newspaper, called Globe Life, it's basically the life section, there was a great article on wild edibles, and it was about a specific book that has come out recently by an author who's made her living foraging for wild edibles and selling them to restaurants in Toronto. I believe one restaurant in particular, but I believe she was selling to other ones as well. Her name's Mrs. Matsuoka Wong, and the book's called Foraged Flavors, Finding Fabulous Ingredients in Your Backyard or Farmer's Market. So essentially, what I think is so fantastic about this is that this is a very mainstream publication, and it's just great to see that getting the exposure, this kind of thing getting the exposure that it needs and deserves. So the newspaper was a bit washed out in the light outside, so I want to just zoom in here to show the full page that was devoted to wild edibles. As you can see here, this is a sumac branch with sumac berries. Great picture. And the article actually just runs along this one side. And then on the next page, on page 3, and this was printed on Wednesday, July 18th, by the way. And then there's the rest of the story here. And you can see there's tiger lily, dandelions, and some other great herbs and wild foods. And then the next title is Foraging. A new book blurs the boundary between weeds and delicacies. And it gives some information on a few different wild foods. This one's pretty neat. Let's just read this one here. The French call this common roadside weed black carotte sauvage, and that's Queen Anne's lace, or wild carrot. And the seeds inside the flower cluster, smell, and taste intensely of carrots. You can also eat the roots, but there's a high risk of misidentifying them with toxic plants. Mrs. Matsuoka Wong sticks to the seeds. Mr. LaRue candies the seeds before spooning them on top of dark chocolate mousse. That sounds really good. Probably going to have to try something like that at some point in a future video. And once you know how to identify it, it's really not that risky to harvest. But Queen Anne's lace does look very similar to poison hemlock, so you want to definitely know your plants that you're harvesting before doing that. That's always something you want to take good precautions of. And it's essentially just getting to the fact that we have all this food around us, and we don't need to go looking for these really exotic foods that are often sold in restaurants, like what do they call them, fiddleheads, which the flavor of fiddleheads is alright, it's nothing spectacular, or morel mushrooms, or these other things which, yes, they're great. I'm not saying there's no reason not to eat them, but there's a wide array of other things which have even more flavor and can be even more nutritious in some ways as well. And the recipes in that book, from what I was reading in the article, it sounds like they're very typical recipes, but adding wild foods in. And this is a great thing for anyone who is just starting to get into wild foods. You're not obviously necessarily going to have a whole meal that's all wild foods, but you might start adding them into dishes as garnishes maybe to start, but then you get into making sauces and other things that would add to the flavor of a dish. And it doesn't have to be this harsh, sort of wild-tasting dish that's really bitter and really basically difficult to enjoy. It can be done in a way that's culinarily appealing and really adds value to the dish that you're making and brings more robustness to the flavor. So for example, one recipe they're talking about was adding sorrel, wood sorrel, to risotto. So if you've ever had risotto, you know it's a fairly high-class type of dish. It takes time to prepare. You need some expensive ingredients if you're adding saffron and things like that. And wood sorrel is very common. It looks like four-leaf clovers. There's some right here even. This is funny. Some people mistake it for four-leaf clovers. So there's just some sitting in the cracks between these flagstones. And you can see it's got that four-leaf clover look. However, four-leaf clover has a pattern, or the clover plant has a pattern on the inside part of each thing. So when you see it solid like that, that is wood sorrel. And that's what has that lemony flavor. And it actually is very high in oxalates, so you do not want to consume this for long periods of time. It's definitely just sort of a garnish type of wild edible. But that's no reason not to consume it. You just don't want to make it a staple food. There, you can see that close up and the pattern in detail. Looks like some hearts all joined at a stem. It has a very lemony, light flavor. Quite different from clover, if you can identify clover, which is very similar. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future video, but adding that adds some contrast and zip to a dish. And it's a unique flavor. And once you start to get familiar with all those different flavors in different foods, you can start to think of how you can incorporate these into dishes and make very tasty meals. So I just wanted to share that. Check out that article. Check out other links below if you want to support my channel. And yeah, just let me know in the comments below if you've ever used, or when you started using wild foods, if you do use them, what kind of dishes would you add them to? How would you use them? If you even have the means, make a video response and share a recipe or share ways in which you do this. So click like, favorite, and subscribe to this channel and this video. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.